Hello and welcome to another Manor Classics podcast. This week, James Bellis and Alex Ian. James runs Chester Cars and Coffee and has teamed up with fellow petrolhead Alex Ian to present Seized Gearbox on YouTube. So grab a cuppa and a biscuit. I'm Andy Talbot.
Hello.
We normally start this talking about how you got into a passion for classic cars or things that are automotive, because sometimes we have crossovers where we perhaps into motorcycles or other stuff.
Yes.
And go on.
Growing up, I think my mum was my main influence. She started
Not that kind of podcast.
She started off with Capris,
Right,
and then went on to Porsches. She had a couple of 924s and a 944, and weekends we just go to car dealerships and test drive cars just for the hell of it. And my dad always had company Jags, so I've sort of ended up with a Porsche and a Jag in the garage as sort of part of that.
That's quite extravagant from my upbringing. And just to throw in my bit is, I mean, you mentioned your mum doing, I thought it was some kind of confessional and damaged childhood or something, but in some ways my damage was done by my mum had owned a VW Beetle, you see. So it was always about Volkswagens, and that's, that was the thing. I always remember these photographs, the black and white pictures of a 1964 Beetle. But a Jag and a Porsche at such a young age, and they're quite high-end cars.
Yeah, so he had quite a good number of XJ40s, and when he retired, he had a Daimler, and that Daimler is still on the road now, and I know the owner, and there's a note in the history file that when he is no longer with us, that I want it. But when I got married, he bought an X300, and in a sad way, when my mum was taken to hospital before she passed on, she went to hospital in the X300. So for me, I wanted an X300 type Jag and went for the XJR, which I've had now for about 5 years.
Right. That's where that Jaguar passion started.
So the Jag passion came from my dad, but then obviously the X300 shape came from the happy times. He had it when I was married, and then the sort of sad time, it was the last car my mum went in. But she had, she loved Porsches. I mean, she could never afford a 911, but she would have liked one.
So what was the Porsche? What was the Porsche she had?
So she had two 924s and a 944. Right. They were, early 80s.
Yeah, they were very impressive when they came out. I mean, obviously since then, everybody ridicules them with the Audi van engine kind of sort of thing, don't they? Which
was the 924. So her last
really
one was a 85 white 944 with black Porsche logo trim and white cookie cutter wheels. So if I could find one of those, I'd definitely have one.
Yeah. James, how did you start off with yours? Is it a similar story? Because I think Alex, myself and James have got a similar thing where parents' cars, and for me it was my grandfather's as well. So where does the family connection with automotive stuff start with you?
So interestingly, my parents are both bikers, right? So therefore everything was two wheels, and then I come along, and all of a sudden two wheels is no longer an option. Even their wedding vehicle was a motorcycle and sidecar. So I came along, and what do two bikers who have a child do? They buy a Reliant Robin. So my formative, very early years were spent in a Reliant Robin. Thankfully, my grandfather, so it's when my grandfather was the real petrol head, him and my uncle. So my uncle used to take me around to car dealerships, particularly going brochure hunting. I remember, I think it was my 10th birthday, he'd taken me around brochure hunting. And then I remember, I think it was on my 11th birthday, possibly taking me to the NEC Motor Show and, going around, seeing all these brand new cars and seeing all this stuff in the kind of late 90s and meeting Wolf and Jet from Gladiators, I seem to remember, which is nice and topical for Gladiators being back on the telly. But the sort of types of car, my granddad had all sorts of different things. And the story always goes that when my dad came along, he had a three-wheeler Morgan. So back in 1959, this three-wheeler Morgan, And he had to give it up when my dad came along, and he never quite forgave him, I don't think. But he had all sorts of things, all sorts of interesting cars. But one of the ones that really stood out was the last car that he chose for himself, which is a Hyundai S Coupe. So one of those early 90s, like very rare now. And that sort of set in mind for me because it was a bit oddball and a bit unusual, that it was that kind of thing that I really enjoyed. My uncle was great at sort of all sorts of different things. My first car was his old car, which was a Vauxhall Nova, in brown, an SR in brown. That it was quite sort of unusual. And if you talk to people in the Nova circles now, they're like, there were brown SRs. It was like, yeah, they were.
I'm asking the same question. I remember that pale yellow, but I remember those 3-spoke wheels that they had when they first came out.
Well, mine had Astra GTE wheels, so it didn't have those. It was the kind of almost disky wheels that it had with opal centre caps. But yes, in this dark chocolate brown, I think that set me on my way then, because that was it. I was known as the guy with the brown Nova. And then that's it. All sort of spiraled from there.
What's worse about those Novas? Just sidetracking there. Do you remember when they did the saloon version, and it was so ugly? They added like a grey strip across the back just to diffuse the look of the back end of it.
They were horrible.
And that's funnily enough then, so just during kind of COVID times, I spotted online a brown saloon, and I kind of thought to myself, I've got to go and re-scratch that Nova itch. And so I bought that, and it decorated my driveway for 3 years before I realised I was never going to get round to it and sold it on.
Yeah, you just don't see those things anymore. But if you look at the size of those cars back then as well, it's kind of, you wonder how you'd survive on modern roads. And that's, we're all sort of, maybe that's the topic for a further conversation at some point, but certainly, my dad was a biker back in the 60s, a cafe racer, going from cafe to cafe and racing each other and all that kind of stuff. And he had Velisets and a BSA Gold Star. So my dad wasn't really a car person. But it's interesting you're saying about the Reliant Robin idea, because of course in the 60s and from the 50s, you had micro cars like the Hankels and Messerschmitts, and you could use them on a motorcycle license, and it was all that kind of thing, wasn't there? It was the family vehicle was actually potentially a sidecar outfit, a combination, because that's what you could afford, and that was a working person's.
Well, it did all we needed when we were very young. So it wasn't until the third brother came along that all of a sudden it wasn't quite big enough anymore that they realised they needed to get a driving car licence and got an Austin Allegro. So I'm sure that was an upgrade from a Reliant Robin.
A square wheel, of course. Yeah, I remember when the mid-70s when the Reliant Kitten came out and it had 4 wheels.
4 wheels and bright orange paintwork often as well.
But the coolest thing about Reliance of that period was I was a big fan of Star Wars when it came out, and then in later years when I found out that it was actually underneath it was actually Reliant mechanicals from the Bond bug, and of course that was Ogle Design that developed the Bond bug. And growing up in the 70s, again seeing Bond bugs, 3-wheel Bond bugs on the road, bright orange, it's incredible to see something like that, and made 3 wheels cool. For a time, anyway. And
I think that's the thing, isn't it? Because often they are derided even today, aren't they? But actually, you look at them, of their period, especially the Bond bugs, were incredibly cool. And yet, actually, the Reliant Robin and all of the 3-wheel cars were stuff that got people on the road when they wouldn't have otherwise been able to. And they were so economical and so good to buy, and it put whole communities onto a road. And those kind of cars, those ones that really got people onto the road, those are the Minis, Morris Minors, 2CVs. They're quite important culturally.
Yeah, and on that theme of getting you on the road, I think that's the thing for me that attracted me about having a car, is that from early on, my first car was a VW Beetle. I just had the freedom to do anything I wanted. So if we went out anywhere, I'd offer to take my car because I knew I could get back. If they wanted to come with me, fine, but I had the means to do that. I could go home when I wanted to. I could take off wherever I wanted to at the weekend, or when I was a student. You had that power and that security.
What Beetle was it, Andy?
I had a 1973 1300 Beetle in gold.
Oof.
Yeah, registration number BTE 414L, which to me spelt beetle.
Yeah, it does.
But it was that freedom, and I think now, even today, it's that escapism. And whatever vehicle I own, it's trying to take me somewhere.
Yeah.
I always say it's a bit like Back to the Future. It's like a time machine where when you're in it, it creates that that era for you. It creates that ambient, the whole sort of car, the smells, the interior, the wheel that you're holding. All that takes you back to a different age. It's escaping.
I think that was what was one of the things that was really incredible when I did buy that Nova project that I never got done. When I sat in it, I opened the door and I sat in it and I closed the door again, and it smelt like my Nova. And that's an incredible thing, isn't it? That cars do have that certain nostalgic smell. And I sat in there and went, this smells like a Nova. And then quite recently at Chester Cars and Coffee, I got to sit in another Nova SR, 3-door hatch. I sat in there, closed the door and went, yes, this smells like a Nova. And it's just incredible that there is just a certain kind of ambience with different cars, and they can, just that one little bit can take you to back.
I've discussed this previously with somebody, and sometimes it's about the glue.
Yes, on
50s cars especially, it can be fish-based glue or whatever it might be. But modern cars, obviously, it tends to be those plastics and potentially the glue, sticking things together on those. I guess I don't know, but so to me they're like an escape, and again that connection we've talked about so far. It's about sort of that family history and that connection that it's just there must be that. That phrase, give me a child until they're 7, I'll show you the man kind of thing?
Yeah. Yes.
Maybe in that first 7 years, that experience of cars or bikes or whatever it is, that gets into your system and stays there. I don't know.
I think it's those people that shape you, isn't it? So, you look at those people at that age, and, if they encourage your interest, it's important. And I think that's why it's so good, obviously my children and your children and the people you come across, and it's encouraging that interest in them to say, actually, this is something that's really relevant. This is something that's exciting. My 4-year-old can identify different car badges now because she's interested in it, and that kind of thing is important to inspire. And they'll have those memories, and you have those vivid memories. I vividly remember my granddad getting a Ford Escort XR3i back in the kind of must have been very early, late 80s, very early 1990s. I will always remember that. So that's a vivid thing. And I like to think, my girls will remember going out in the 2CV or, going to these shows and seeing something interesting. And I think that's important.
James, what's your kind of favourite era of motor vehicle? Does it go beyond your experience that you've had
For many years, I ran 60 Spitfires. I had a 1966 Mark II, and I had that restored from a basket case. So for a long period of my life, probably about 10 years, I used to use that for about 8 months of the year, and then I'd buy a £150 car for the winter. And then the time came, you needed something a bit more reliable, so it went, for a song. And then you move house, you don't have space or storage. And then the moment I moved where I moved now, I had a garage again. So I bought a Mark III Spitfire because the Mark IIs were a bit too expensive. But that was never as good as the car I previously had. So there was a period I liked 60s cars, but they weren't turnkey reliable. So 2 years ago, I sold the Spitfire, and then I used that money to buy a 2002 Boxster, just because it does the same thing. It's a nice little 2-seater sports car, but it's turnkey reliable. You can go wherever you want, and you're not going to break down, which unfortunately the Spitfire did quite a lot. But era now, I would say, I'd say the 90s is where it is. The 90s, early 2000s.
Is that because they offer some practicality and usability, and you can get the parts for things?
I think it's the last sort of era of, there's no sort of nanny controls. You've got good safety things. You've got your ABS and your airbags, but they're still simple to maintain. They're really reliable, good parts availability. I just think that's where it's at, really. The 80 stuff now is, it's starting to get a bit unobtainium price-wise.
Yeah.
So get yourself into a sort of 90s, 2000s car, good value, reliable, and I think that's where it's at.
Yeah, I think there's that period about the start of the 2000s where things have started to get more complex. So if you buy anything newer than that, you've got all sorts of ECU and brains to deal with. Although having said that, the 914 I owned a few years ago. Yeah, that was a 73, and yet it had a brain, it had a computer brain in it for the Bosch fuel injection. It was electronic, so that was the start of it even back then. But yeah, cars that you can fix yourself. That's and again, the 914 I didn't replace, except mainly because of the values have gone sky high. But recently bought myself, I think I told you about the Smart Roadster, which gives you that low down thrill, and it's mid rear engine. It does the same kind of job, but I haven't got the unreliability.
It will get you home.
Well, any smart owners know anything about smart cars. Electrically, they're a bit challenged.
But you were saying it's doing like 60 to the gallon.
Yeah. And you can get the bits. Good. It's just it's one of those cars, like we're saying, it's hit the sweet spot in terms of that, like other 90s cars. I mean, 2004 Smart Roadster Coupe, like this one I've got, is there's a guy not so far from here he's probably the largest breaker of the cars in the UK, and he's got a garden littered with parts and cars that he's breaking, and also there's aftermarket parts are available, and there's a good forum and a good kind of community out there which can help you. So that's hitting the sweet spot of that, really. Although a lot of the quirky things I've owned in the past, you tend to be on your own and stuff. And Alex, you'll appreciate that because you're also into your quirky stuff, aren't you?
Yeah. So yeah, I think.
Well, can we just define what we mean by quirky, maybe first?
I think for me, quirky cars is things that are a bit out of the ordinary. Often like things that people go, "Oh no, you wouldn't want one of those, would you?" And that appeals to me. Kind of, I don't like to be told what to do, do I? So if people tell you, we don't want that.
Well, just on that score, if you own an NGB. Somebody's going to come along and say, you didn't have one of those on an NGB in 1975.
That's it.
Your badges should be gold, or this should be this and that, whatever. So if you got something a little bit out of the ordinary, you become the expert, and that's part of the fun, maybe.
I think definitely it is, and I think when you own cars which are quite rare, and that you're going to take them to a show, and there's not going to be another one there to compare it to sometimes, or you own something that. People have to go, well, what's that? I always enjoy that when people go, what is it? And you go, well, have a guess. So I think I've always been drawn to that slightly more unusual thing. That's that kind of slight desire to go slightly against the norm. And
educate people.
Yeah, partly that, it's my day job to educate people, so it's part of it. But I think I like going slightly against the norm. I've never been one to sort of totally go with the flow. So when I decided, right, I'd been in financed cars for a couple of years whilst I needed to I've just bought a house where I needed predictable outgoings, and decided, right, okay, I'm going to chop in a BMW 1 Series, and I'm going to pick up a Saab 9000 because that's what I actually want. And, daily drove that for 5 years with everyone going, why have you bought an old banger? Well, because it's cost me £600 and it's still going to this day. So,
well, as we were saying, you were a deputy head in a secondary school. I was a teacher in a secondary school, and at that point, I remember I turned up on a regular basis in a 1983 Trabant.
Yes,
and if you passed the kids that you didn't quite like on the way out of school, the mixture, all the oil sitting low down in the engine. So you just adjust the mixture a little bit as you drive past them, just to grenade them with some smoke.
Well, my favourite story of that kind of ilk is so actually it's interesting, links to what James was talking about. I had a Porsche 924 for a few years, and I remember the first time I took that to school, and I had a classroom that was a kind of one of those temporary classrooms on a field, and the car park was right next to it, and I parked it right outside the classroom, and I just watched out the window as this little crowd gathered around a bright red Porsche in the car park. I came out of the door and I said, yeah, boys, everything all right? Everything okay? And they're like, sir, someone's got a Porsche. Some teacher must be really loaded. So I ambled over and I was like, oh, yeah, boy, that's nice, isn't it, boys? And they're going, oh, sir, it must be really good. And I just subtly pulled the keys out my pocket. I went towards it, and they were like, no, it's not yours, is it, sir? Absolutely. And they all thought it must be absolutely loaded. And what they didn't know is I'd paid 650 quid for it off eBay.
Yeah.
And it was actually hiding galloping rot. Yeah. But that didn't matter to these 13-year-old, 14-year-old boys who just thought it was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, I can just imagine there's sort of the crowd parting, and there was one boy stood there and says, but it's got an Audi van engine.
Yeah, to be fair, I mean, no matter where I took that car, I often used to get that levelled at it. But you know what? It was a fantastic engine.
Yeah, they're great cars.
Really good.
They're on my my bucket list, potentially to have one.
Not at 650 quid anymore.
No,
it'll have to have the sunroof though. But bizarrely, yes. I think the sunroof on those was called the Targa roof.
Yes,
because it was so big. It was essentially their version of Targa.
Even though it was
Yeah, and I owned once a Pontiac Fiero, and that had an enormous sunroof as well. It was almost a Targa. It was a Targa. It was a sunroof, sort of size and shape, but it was just that little bit bigger. Yeah. So when he took it out, it was a big
has it now become an F355? Probably.
They were, both the Fieras I had were pretty standard spec, yeah, but the handling on them was awful. I think the front end was the rear end of something like a Chevy Citation, and the rear end was the front end of something else. It was kind of really was a parts bit special, but
they looked better than they drove. That's for sure.
The most unusual thing I drove to school was a 1966 VW ambulance.
Oh wow! Okay,
that was probably the weirdest thing I ever took to a school. But I did it once because the other one broke down.
Yeah,
we talk about this, don't we, all the time? Because I say if you were ever to be head teacher, you've got to be that guy that brings the Vauxhall Cavalier or the oddball car.
Something oddball. Well, I think to be fair with my fleet, I think probably would at some point end up turning up and parking in a head teacher space if I was to get there with something strange. But I used to take great joy, over COVID when we weren't always in, to always park the 2CV in the head teacher's space just because he didn't like it.
I mean, the 2CV became cool when I saw there was one in American Graffiti.
Yes,
George Lucas's film.
Yeah,
it was just. Car, though, I think was the wrong era. It's meant to be set in 62, but I think the 2CV in it was a later
one.
Later car.
Late after the 70s, yeah.
But so what other quirky stuff have you owned then?
So, need to talk about that one specific car in your garage.
Well, I'll definitely mention that. So 2CVs, I think they're one of the key passions. So my two key passions really are Saabs and 2CVs. I'd say that there's where it really is. So I've got 4 Citroen 2CVs at home in various different states of repair. I've got all disrepair, and that's Ian Seabrook of Hubnut fame's fault because he took us for a ride in his ones and went, I need one of these. So I've had those. I've got in the garage, which James is referring to, I have a Yugo 45. Which, exceptionally rare. I think there's only sort of 4 or 5 on the road. Mine is very much not on the road.
I'll just say there's a reason why there's only 4 or 5.
Yes, indeed.
Because I quite liked those. And I went to test drive one a few years ago, the Classic Car Weekly. And I was actually quite optimistic. It was great size. I thought, it's simple. No, it drove like a dog. But I don't know whether that was just that car.
Well, I've only managed to drive mine very kind of up and down to the driveway because it came to me as a non-runner. So it's been a North Wales car all its life. It was bought from a church garage in Wrexham. It lived in Llandudno. Then it lived in, I think, Prestatyn. And according to the lady who I bought it off, who was the original owner, it only ever left North Wales once, which was to go Christmas shopping in Chester.
It probably couldn't.
It's probably couldn't, could it? No, so yeah. So
Burgundy, by any chance?
No, white.
Oh, right. Okay.
And to distinguish it from the other things, the then owner had put all these kind of side stickers all over it. So it's got these pink and purple side stickers all over it. So, I mean, that cost me £200 and it's parked in the corner of my garage and one day I'll get around to it. And to be fair, the fact that it cost me £200 is probably only worth still £200 means it doesn't really need any hurry on it. But again, it was unusual. I saw it pop up for sale in the next town over and went, I'm never going to see another one of those. Why not?
I remember they did a US spec version. They sold them in the US.
They were called the GV for good value.
Yeah.
Do you remember Dragnet, the film with... I can't remember his name now, but they were given a Yugo.
Leslie Nielsen, was it?
Might have been, I think.
Tom Hanks.
Oh, right, okay.
And I can't remember.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, I think it was an 80s remake of Dragnet, right, okay. And they were given a Yugo as a police car.
But it was interesting when they did try and import them to America. So a fellow called Malcolm Bricklin was the guy that tried to...
Canadian guy.
Yeah, so he wanted to bring them into the United States. So he'd previously brought Subaru into the United States. And his next thing was, let's get these Yugos. And obviously there are so many stories about Yugos in the United States and how unreliable they were, that sort of GM dealers were trying to give them away, buy a Cadillac and get a Yugo for free, all these kind of things. And one story about going across a very large bridge and getting blown off the edge and all sorts. But these kind of horror stories that kind of put people off. Yeah. And obviously they were never a sales success in America, but they were just, probably... because of all the kind of the oil crisis and everything at the time, they thought this was going to be a really good idea, but the product never quite lived up to it. So I look forward to one day getting mine back on the road so I can just experience how terrible it is. But it'll be a case of just taking it to shows and being a talking point because, it's just different. And looking, there's a Yugo Sana for sale on eBay at the moment, and I was kind of have to keep my hands in my pockets there.
I'm quite famous for in my family for looking at stuff which potentially is not great for practical purposes, but like the Chrysler Sebring, which I've got, which is full 4-seater convertible with a VW TDI engine. It's one of those quirks of those different partnerships, European manufacturers going into the USA. Yeah, it is exactly that. But that's the interesting story about it, that it's these kind of mashups, these kind of quirks of those cross-pollination of different cultures, and particularly those that went to the United States. Like the Subaru, you mentioned the Subaru, like the Subaru Brat, which and the chicken tax.
Yes,
I'm sure you know about.
Yes, of course.
I'm sure you know about the chicken tax, which is. Do you want to just explain?
I don't know it, so I'd love to hear it.
As I recall, I'm trying to remember now because I'll have to. It's a very vague thing, but I know that you want to fill it in because I think it was a tax put on things because they wanted people to buy American goods. That's right, wasn't it?
So basically, I remember seeing it when I was in the States in the mid-90s. You'd see Toyota trucks and they go into the United States, but without the flatbeds on the back. So basically, the beds were actually made in the US. So a proportion of the vehicle had to be made in the United States and all that kind of stuff. There's a bit more to it than that, but essentially, it was to sort of prioritise US manufacturers. So the Subaru Brat was brought in as a passenger vehicle, not a commercial vehicle. So they bolted seats. Two glass fibre seats in the back, and each seat had two handles for you to hold on to. You were facing rearward in the back.
Yeah. Obviously, somebody saw that and thought, the Skoda Felicia Fun. That must be where that idea came from.
To some extent. At least they were facing the right way in a Felicia Fun. And the other thing about the Subaru Brat is they had Targa roofs in those. Sorry, not Targa roofs, T-top roofs in them as well when they were all the rage. Because America didn't really make convertibles for a period of time in the early 70s. They just went to the T-top craze. So what else sort of unusual stuff have you got before we come back to James?
I've got at the moment one of the most unusual things. I've got a Pontiac Transport, GM minivan mine's the earliest one in the UK actually, so it was 1990, and it's actually the second one I've owned. It's less than 10 in the UK, but I bought this one off a guy that's had it since 1997. It had been sat in his lockup for a long time, so slowly putting some miles back onto it. And so the story behind those for me is, so my parents had some friends that had sort of lived in America. They moved back to the UK and bought their Oldsmobile 88 with them. And then when they had a fourth child, they needed to get something a little bit bigger, and they wanted something American. And so they had this burgundy Pontiac Transport, and I remember seeing it for the first time and just being blown away that this thing was incredible. Always for me that was a bucket list car. So I saw one come up on eBay in a scrapyard. It'd been sent into the scrapyard, and the fellow was like, I think it's too good to scrap, so I'll sell it on eBay. No reserve auction on eBay. And the story I told my wife was that my finger slipped 3 times, and I ended up paying slightly more for it than I wanted, with 2 days MOT from a scrapyard. But thankfully, a little bit of welding later, and got it through an MOT, and ran that for a couple of years before the rot got too bad, and then decided I really need to have another.
They're unusual for rot, those, because of course the plastic panels on a metal space frame like the Pontiac Fiero as well we were talking about. So
all inner arches and around the suspension turrets.
You can see where the rot is.
So you could see it, and So on the outside, it looked immaculate.
It's, what do they call them? Dustbuster.
The Dustbuster, like the Dustbuster Hoover.
Of the shape. Giant wedge of cheese.
And it's one of those that gets noticed again. That's a car that it doesn't matter where you go. Everyone, what on earth's that?
Yeah, they do look space age, but the interior was always a bit of a letdown, because I don't think, did they come with digital dashes?
No, so they've got a real range of buttons, sort of like all sorts of sliders for the wipers and all sorts. The dash is quite interesting, but they are very traditional dials. But the seats are exceptional. They're some of the most comfortable seats I've ever sat in. And, sticking the cruise control on at 60 miles an hour and just pottering along, it's incredible. But the first one had a 3.8 litre V6 engine in it. And that I could get 30 to the gallon out of it if I was tickling it along at 60 on the motorway. And the one I've got now is a 3.1, so it's a smaller engine, but only a 3-speed box, and that I've not got that above 25 to the gallon yet.
I always thought there were 2.8 V6, the same as the other General Motors, like the Fiero was a 2.8 V6.
No, this one was a 3.8. It was
Right,
the old
okay.
Buick block.
Right.
Hugely reliable engine. So the red one had done sort of over 200,000 miles, and the engine was absolutely spot on. And it's still about. A chap I know has got it. He's going to weld it at some point. But the white one came up. I've been keeping my eye out for them and went, oh, there's one for sale.
Yeah.
And it looks in good order, and again paid a bit more than I really wanted to. But beggars can't be choosers when you're looking at something of which there are less than 10 in the UK.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean,
That's a cool thing.
yeah, I Google the Pontiac Transport or the Oldsmobile Silhouette, and what was the other one? There was
The Chevrolet Lumina.
That's it.
Yeah, Chevrolet Lumina.
Which was also, I think they sold the Lumina as a car as well, which I think in the States they did it.
There was so that was the Lumina minivan, and then later it was replaced by a Lumina car.
Yeah. So James, have you got any sort of story about anything quirky? What's the most outlandish thing you've owned?
I think last year I bought a Fiat Punto Cabrio.
That's it. I knew there was something.
That was really, really cool.
What colour was it, by the way?
It was silver with grey leather.
What colour was the roof? Was it a blue roof? Fabric roof on that?
Grey roof.
Black roof, I think. Was it?
Black roof.
Yeah, it was black roof.
Because I always seen there's a particularly Johnny Smith had one recently. I remember it when they came out. It was yellow, bright yellow with a blue roof.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But that was an interesting story.
You know, I had an eBay search for one of those about 3 years ago because I thought if I can grab one of those.
Bought mine. But yeah, basically, because my background is I've done Chester Cars and Coffee for 4 or 5 years, and Ben from Tasty Classics contacted me, and he said when he gets to 100,000 subscribers, he wants to do a Cars and Coffee. So we put one on, and this guy drove down from Birmingham in the Fiat Punto Cabrio, and I saw it in the car park with a for sale sticker, and I thought, that's cheap. I've got to buy it. So I just sort of hung around next to the car till the owner came, and I said, I'll give you 500 quid for it. And he said, it saves me driving it back to Birmingham, because he was with his son who had a Uno Turbo. So yeah, bought that for 500 quid and used it for the summer. You drove it.
Yeah, we had good fun. We did a couple of videos, didn't we? So doing the YouTube thing, we compared that. What could best convertible you could buy for £1,000, wasn't it?
And then sold it for 1,000. I just checked the MOT history, and it's failed on needing welding.
Oh no!
So poor thing. We'll see what the fate is of that.
Yeah. So I mean that kind of vehicle. It's the kind of. When they came out, they had this a big hurrah of kind of look what we're selling, Fiat adverts and whatever, and then suddenly they just disappear.
It was great because like the Boxster is a 2-seater. There's 3 of us at home, so with the Punto we could all go out as a family, which was nice. But I prefer the Boxster.
Yeah, that's why
you surprised me, really.
That's why I've got this Sebring, you see, because we're on holiday in the States, it was great. And then I suddenly realised that this version, which I've got, which is made, mine's a 2008, had the VW 2-litre TDI engine in it. Well, you've got 50, 60 miles per gallon, a full 4-seater convertible. Not even Mercedes can actually sort of beat that. So, off the radar stuff, it does throw up some quirky things. Obviously, a lot of these cars we're talking about have their Achilles heels.
Yes.
Which would either rust or mechanical woes or just not built very well.
Yeah. But it's interesting because like the Sebring, so, I've got a Saab 9.3 convertible. That's my daily. So that's it's a Fiat diesel in that. And that's been my daily for the same reason, though, as you said, with the Punto convertible. It's great. My kids love it. There's 4 of us, so that's it. Roof back. The car seats are permanently in it. And even today, they were like, Daddy, can we put the roof down? Well, currently raining, so no, not today.
Yeah. I've just bought something almost normal for me recently, which I was looking at T5s, and I've just bought a Toyota Alphard.
Oh, yes.
2.4 petrol in it. So it's 30 mpg, but chain-driven engine on those rather than the V6 version. But yeah, it's got conference seating, but I didn't want the mechanical woes of T5s and the scene tax you have to pay. So that's the way I've gone. And I've owned Nissan Cubes, I've had a Nissan Pow, I've had a few quirky unusual JDM stuff.
Yeah.
And again, it's just that little bit of effort, just to look a little bit further,
Definitely.
and you can find alternatives.
I had a Nissan L Grand for the same kind of reason for a while. So we were looking at something that was a bit bigger, and we have the job. We thought, well, let's get an L Grand. That was a 3.5 litre V6 engine. And again, that was quite good. It was quite fun. It was different. It was, but ultimately wasn't quite as different as the Pontiac, so the Pontiac ended up staying.
But even as you get older, I've got two 20-somethings at home and two little dogs as well. And if we're going to go any distance, a normal car will not do it. So
need the space.
You need sort of, and that's the thing. Manufacturers just don't make family cars. Nothing fits a family unless you go to that size.
And this is the bizarre thing, because we've been shopping around looking for a car that's a good family car for us, and even you go into all the showrooms to fit. I've got two little ones, and I've got a stepson who's 17, and we can't all five of us fit in any of normal cars unless you're getting sort of very, very big. So more and more of a challenge.
So what do you take, Andy, when it's the four of you and the dogs? What do you go out in?
Well, I'm going to have to. That's the thing. It was a 195,000 mile Golf Plus 1.6 TDI, which did 70 miles per gallon. But yes, that's not.
It's going to be the Toyota
it's a bit poorly at the moment. So the idea is a Toyota Alphard for the time being. I'm going to try that out and see how that fits. But that'll be the longer distance thing. But then, if we get a bright sunny day and I'm up in Edinburgh or something, we should have brought the convertible.
Yes, definitely.
I want a car to do everything. So I've ended up with 5 cars now. So,
that's the only way. I don't think there is any other way to do it. It's you've got to have multiple cars for all the different
services.
services.
Same with me. It's like I've got 5 cars and they all do something different,
Yeah.
I shall shut up with my 9 then.
But
Most of mine are broken, however.
That's the beauty sometimes of being surrounded. We're sat here in the podcast studio at Manor Park, and we're surrounded by cars here. You can jump in and out of them all day long, and then come to an auction. You can sit in one and you can see what it's like and get close with these cars, because it's just a big showroom. But again, if you've got Chester Cars and Coffee, James, which you run and organise, and you see a lot of cars coming through and cars that you've kind of aspired to, and sometimes you don't meet your heroes, and sometimes you find something new and different, perhaps, that you can think, I quite like one of those one day. I'll check those out.
Yeah, there's
What's your wish? We normally do a wish list, like a dream car garage. So if we're talking like a dream car, what sort of thing would you look out for then? What's
money no object?
Yeah, let's go for that.
So money no object for me. I'm a Miami Vice fan.
Okay.
So it'd be a Ferrari 365 Daytona Spider.
A fake one.
Yes, do you know what?
Like they had in Miami Vice.
Yeah, and recently your Baron's outfit sold one, a red one.
Barron's Manor Park Classics, yeah.
And that was for sale with a dealer up until recently for just under 20 grand. And if I'd had just under 20 grand, because it had a Jag straight 6 engine in it from an X300, I really would have fancied that.
Can't remember the manufacturer, the guys that made those.
That was Southern Roadcraft, that one.
Right.
I think McBurney did one. So dream car.
Was the McBurney one the car, the replica they did for them, which they had for Miami Vice?
Yeah, that was Corvette based, wasn't it? Yeah. But yeah, so one of those would be my dream car. Whether it's real or fake doesn't matter. And then it's got to be an 80s 911. 911 Turbo, the Widowmaker. The original one was, I think it was 1976, 1977. It was a 3-litre. So yeah, one of those, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing for me as well. Is that something like that too normal for me? So when I look at those kind of cars I want to aspire for the future, if I'm looking at 911, I'm thinking 912E, 1976, 1 year only.
When they
which
had
basically
the fuel
has a VW
crisis.
2-litre flat 4 engine in the back. It was a stopgap after the 914 was finished, and then before we got to the Scirocco, etc. But yeah, I mean, DeLorean's always on my list.
It's amazing what they're fetching now.
And not for Back to the Future reasons, of course, the Back to the Future scene tax. Because last time I looked, it was about 15,000, and now they've gone to 30 or whatever.
Oh,
yeah. So, James, what's your kind of, if you were to pick a couple of cars for your dream garage, then what would you pick?
So number one for me, and considering I've talked about oddball cars a lot, it's very mainstream, and a Jaguar E-Type has always been my number one. number one car, and was really lucky. I turned 40 recently. My wife paid for one to rent one for the day, and it was just an incredible experience. And I did worry meeting my heroes. Was it going to be the moment that was going to make me go, no, don't want an E-Type, but drove an E-Type and went, I think I need to get saving, but they are silly money.
Which version of the E-Type was it?
So it was an S2 that I drove.
Okay. Roadster?
No, fixed head. So it would have to be fixed head for me, I think, on the E-Type, just because of the shape. And that was incredible. So it was up in Northumberland, drove it through the Northumbria National Park, up as far as the Scottish border. And, it was just a really glorious experience. It was outstanding. And I think that sort of really cemented for me is that number one place,
That's
money
still
drops,
there,
it would definitely be an E-Type.
I think values, they're plummeting.
They've started to go down.
I think it's a good time to buy one because there's not many bums for those seats.
No.
I think one of the issues with, there are different iterations of the E-Type and engine-wise and era, the series 1, 2, whatever it might be, Roadster, 2+2. So there's lots of variations, US spec, etc., restored, unrestored. And I think there's a lot of, in the last few years, there's been quite a few E-Types that are coming out of collections and kind of needing to find new interests because we need to get that demographic of the enthusiasts, and we need to get that lower age range encouraged into the scene for what is a massive industry for the UK. So it's probably that. Again, it's a reset, isn't it? It's that people talk about. But again, there are those decent E-Types that are out there that will still fetch decent money.
Absolutely.
An early Roadster will always command
flat four.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. The other thing is saying about don't meet your heroes. I did a road test for a magazine on a DeLorean. I broke down on a roundabout in Leeds. The guy just taking it out of storage and no fuel in it. He hadn't checked, so the fuel gauge had stuck. I was driving it and it broke down. I was in the inside lane, approaching a roundabout to do a right on the third exit. Broke down right on the roundabout. We had to push it. There were shouts from people, where's the dock? All this kind of stuff. And, have you run out of plutonium? All this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And but the other issue then was that he went for fuel and I stayed with the car and still continued to get abused because people thought it was mine. So one time, he didn't want to be stood next to a DeLorean with the engine lid open, and came back with some fuel, but of course there was some kind of vacuum issue then with the injectors because it ran out of fuel. So that was an issue. AA man stopped and said, obviously you're not in the AA or whatever. It doesn't matter. I'll work on it for you, just to say that I've worked on a DeLorean and got him underway. But that was an embarrassment, really. But it was all right. It was okay. It was still on the 4-wheel drive, almost that off-road suspension that the American cars had at the very high level of suspension. It hadn't been Europeanized at all, but the shape of those is incredible. And again, a lot of that is the aesthetic. I think they draw an attention, not the engine, not that PRV V6, but for the shape. That's it.
I think that's it. The shape of the car is is iconic, and then you look around and you see it. It's the same. Same with the Ferrari we're talking about. Same with the E-Type, isn't it? That kind of iconic shape that you see, and that's what really draws people in. I think it's an interesting point you make about the demographic shift and that need to get younger people into some of these real classics, isn't it? Because otherwise, especially think about pre-war things. Actually, a lot of pre-war cars, it's finding more difficult to find owners for because people are just so out of their knowledge, I guess, because there's not as many people who have a nostalgia for those. And that's why the 90s cars are doing so well at the moment, is because that's where the nostalgia, so people with a bit of disposable income see a Sierra Cosworth or something like that and go, actually, that was a car from my youth. Whereas, not so much an Austin Heavy 12 or whatever.
Yeah, there are corners of the industry where pre-war is still popular with. It's actually popular with younger people who can get their hands dirty and do the mechanics and the spannering on those kind of cars because they're easy to work on. Yeah. But it's still small in number, and that needs to be.
Even like now, the 60s cars, the people who were buying them are now probably in their 80s.
Yeah. And the other thing I think, for those of us that grew up in the 70s and the 80s and probably the 90s as well, American television had a lot to do with, and film. You had star cars in movies. Whether it's from Knight Rider or or episodes of Chips back in the 70s that are reruns, and and even films like Batman, where you see those different shapes and those different designs, and some of that popular culture has an impact, and I think they've lost some of that from popular culture now.
Totally.
Because everything, it's not sitting around and gathering around the telly to watch films as much now. Everything is YouTube, TikTok, what have you, and there isn't that kind of level of iconic universal appeal cars that there were.
But so cars also are therapeutic in many ways, aren't they? And I think without them, what would we do?
Indeed.
Have we asked you, Andy, what your 2-car garage would be?
No.
We need to.
Yeah.
You know what? It's weird. I've owned one Ford in my life, really, and that was a Ford Fiesta van. It was a Mark II, and it was like dark, like a mid blue, and it was the ex-Wigan Rugby League souvenir shops van, and I used it as a student. But probably at the top of my list would be the '68 fastback Mustang from Bullitt.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Regardless.
And again, it's that iconic
It's
movie
just
car, isn't it? And that's it.
The
It's
sound,
interesting.
the shape, everything it meant. I'd have one that shape anyway. Obviously, 68 rather than 67.
Yes.
Do you know the difference?
No.
Actually, on the bodywork, the only difference from what I remember is actually just those little side marker lights just under the bumper line, front and back.
Yeah.
That's the sort of the main sort of external difference. So when you see a 67 over a 68, people are paying that premium just because they've got those side marker lights on them, I guess, to turn it into a Bullitt Mustang. But yeah, no, that car is iconic. That's an icon. But I've always fancied owning something like a Herbie replica, something like that. But a DeLorean would be on the list. But to be honest, I've owned a lot of my dream cars. So I own one of my dream cars anyway, which is my VW Thing, the 1973 VW Thing. So that's kind of one of those which, and I wouldn't do without that now. I've owned 5. I'm now on the best one that I've been able to find. But no, it needs a bit more thought, I think, perhaps. I tell you, a car that I did a deep dive into, which you don't see and is unusual and quirky and is a gorgeous car and is on my bucket list, is something called a Pontiac Solstice.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah.
You'll have to educate me on that.
Solstice is basically, they do say it was an MX-5 rival from the sort of about 2006-ish, 2007. They made it for about 3 years.
You know what? It does ring a bell now, actually.
And the front end has got the Pontiac version has got 2 nostrils, and it does read a bit like a C-type from the front end.
It does a little bit.
Yeah, and buttresses on the back end. Not especially fast. It's just from a design point of view, it looked great. They did a version of it called a Saturn Sky, which looked a bit like the Vauxhall VX220, a little bit on the front end. It wasn't quite as pretty. And then Daewoo did a version of it, and Opel. It was sold as an Opel GT in Europe as well.
Oh, right.
But the Solstice was the pinnacle of that design, and at one point it was going to be a baby Corvette, and that's how it was going to be marketed. But that didn't quite work out and became its own thing.
So what do they fetch value-wise?
UK, if you can find one, might be up to about 10 in the UK. So it'd probably be about between 8 and 12 grand, depending which version. There was a version called a GXP, which is kind of the hot version. So they're probably 10 to 12 for a decent one.
It's funny because there was an era there, with the Solstice but also, the Dodge Viper, the Plymouth Prowler, where American they got into those retro looking, kind of really kind of sporty cars. I've always got a soft spot for the Plymouth Prowler. Very much. I think they're amazing looking things.
I think if I were going to pick a third one, it'd be a Plymouth Prowler.
Oh, they are incredible. I think whenever I say, even on the very rare occasion you bump into one and say the NEC Motor Show or something like that, and I can't get enough of it. But I'll also never forget when the Dodge Viper came out. There was a kind of Chrysler dealers that near where I grew up it was near in Leamington Spa, and there was this Dodge Viper that would go up and down the road which my parents would drive up as we were going to and from Leamington. And we had this old Nissan Sunny, and this Dodge Viper came tearing up on the outside of us, flew past us, and then exploded into a sort of cloud of smoke a little bit further up the road. So that Nissan Sunny always became known as the Viper Killer after that.
Brilliant. I remember seeing Viper when they first came out. I was in the United States, and I was on Highway 101 heading to San Francisco. And again, no roof, no side screens, completely open, perfect for that weather. Very basic interior. It just went straight past me. Yeah, amazing to see one of those. But yeah.
I think Redline Competitions has got a vibe at the minute. I bought a couple of tickets.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing you, Viper, leather jacket shades. Maybe even get you a Stetson.
Maybe. I think I would die in a Viper.
Right. Okay. So let's wrap that one up then, guys. So where can we find you? So James, you're going to be at the helm of.
So you can find me
Chester?
first Sunday of every month at Chester Cars and Coffee,
Which is held at, where's that?
That's at Chocks Away Diner near the airfield in sort of Broughton, Harden way.
Yeah, North Wales, yeah.
Yeah, and there's always a really good range there as well, isn't it? I think everything from some of your really bona fide classics all the way through lots of stuff, more modern, modified stuff.
It's a nice mix of
really good mix every month, which is, I guess, what makes that event kind of good. And you look at the whole cars and coffee scene and how it evolves, and you can see there's all sorts of events, but this one, probably one of the best ranges of different cars that you can see. So that's always worth it.
And YouTube, you guys are both on YouTube as well.
We play at doing YouTube. Yes. We're not YouTubers. We have day jobs, but it's a hobby, isn't it?
If there's an opportunity.
Yeah, there's an opportunity
together.
Yeah, and we like to put something together. So that's at Seized Gearbox. So all sorts of different things that we put out there. Some little bits of reviews, little bits of the car show reviews. Often they seem to be some of our better viewed videos. We kind of look at some of the car shows. We just try lots of different things, don't we? We see what works.
I think 140 people saw me here on Thursday for the Throttle Thursday event.
Which is more people than have watched so far the video that I made about a Saab 600, which is like a Lancia Delta.
Lost a subscriber there.
It was that boring.
And we can also see your Pontiac Transport on there as well.
The Transport is definitely on there. It will be on there again as well. I've got a few bits. I actually did a startup video of it yesterday, having woken it from its winter slumber yesterday. So that'll be going up soon. But yeah, all those different things, all the weird and wonderful cars will be on there as well.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for coming along, guys. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, tag and follow us, or visit manorparkclassics.com for future auction details. You can also hear me on ITV4's Auto Mundial and Motorsport Mundial every Sunday morning. Take a look at our other episodes. Bye-bye for now.